I'm not sure claiming that I was in the team that launched BST. But it was definitely a great deal when we had it running. I appreciate the invitation to be here this morning and sharing with you two particular things that I think are of major concern these days in terms of employee management. As you may or may not know, that's what I spend my time doing. So I want to touch on the immigration issues that I see that are going on, and I want to touch a little bit on retention issues for employees. Some of you, regardless of whether you're managing 10, 20, or 200 employees, I think we're faced with many critical situations right now that we gotta address. We gotta pay attention to things that are coming down from a regulatory standpoint, from the immigration standpoint, that are going to hit our businesses. I think is something very important to pay attention to. Most of you know what I would like to do is maybe have some slides to share with you for about 30 minutes, 35 minutes, and then we can open it up for questions and answers. From the immigration standpoint, I want to, most of you, all of you are aware of the situation going on with the no-match letter, or the no-match rule that was going to come down on industries in September. Now, the judge in California, Judge Breyer, went after the government saying, "Can do that. Don't." We're going to put a stop on that and bar the government from mailing the no-match letters to apparently 141,000 businesses across the U.S. How many of you are aware of the no-match letter document? I mean, I'm sure most of you should be. Now, what has happened since? Well, I want to talk a little bit about what if something like that were to happen today in our industry. What if the no-match rule, we were to exercise the no-match rule on our businesses today? What would the impact be? 50% of employees, at least in some businesses, if not more. It's scary when I had my kids asking me if my name matches my social security number. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But it is such a critical situation because you are sometimes placed into playing the police. When the government is actually has a big role for that. But if you were to really take a close look at your business, 100% of your employees, would you be able to, with a great degree of certainty, not that I'm encouraging you to do this, but because it could be against the law, how many of your employees actually have good papers and how many don't? Do you have a pretty good idea? And how good is that number? Because I think there are some actions that can be taken with that in mind. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But the impact, I mean, people are speaking of close to $100 million a year impact on businesses. The impact of that would be time checking records, contacting the authorities, losing employees and having to recruit new employees due to clerical errors, et cetera, et cetera. But the lawsuit says, there could be millions of dollars lost in different industries. The lawsuit also contends that Homeland Security exceeds its statutory authority and arbitrarily pursuing a mismatched social security number indicates a worker isn't authorized to work. So this gets into a gray area of why a mismatch is going on and what's behind that, and if it's actually illegal or not. But do we really know the potential impact of regulations if something like this were to happen? Now, how many of you know what happened a week ago or so, maybe 10 days ago or so? Raise your hand. as far as this lawsuit. You know that now the lawsuit, the Department of Homeland Security has asked the Judge Breyer to delay the lawsuit until March 24th, or it says delay it until March 24th or until the new program is ready. The Bush administration said it will modify this planned crackdown on the U.S. companies employing illegal immigrants. What does that mean? Do we even know? Now, we do have and I have that in a PDF form as far as what the no-match document that came through is like 49 pages long. And we have a summary of like 4 pages if you really want if you really want a summary of it. But the Homeland Security Department is making unspecified changes to its plan. And whether this March 24th is going to hold or not, who knows? And what's going to come down, who knows? So what are you left with as far as what you can plan on? At least last week in Idaho, I was spending some time with producers in Jerome, and there were federal agents standing outside the local Walmart. Okay? Undercover. All right? So I'm doing a training session for some supervisors at a dairy with multiple sites, and one of the messages that morning to a group of like 30 employees was, if you don't have to go into town, don't go. Okay? So there's a whole range of things going on. There's people that are doing nothing about it, all the way to people maybe taking too many steps, or maybe scaring employees. They're going to the extent of maybe scaring employees when we really don't need to do that. But at least at this one dairy, they were telling employees, if you don't have to go into town, ask any of other people that can go into town, have papers to get the stuff for you. The Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency was formed in March of 2003. I wanted to show you this graph that shows the number of worksite enforcement arrests in the last 5 years. But if we take into account that the ICE was formed in March of 2003, well, somebody's justifying their job. No, I'm just, but they're doing their job, right? But there are a number of, this shows a little bit of what's going on. Now, there's a difference here in the red bar and the blue bar. The red bar is criminal arrests, the blue bar administrative arrests. So for me, what I'm seeing across the country and a lot in the western states is that when the feds are coming to a dairy or to a facility, many times they're being drawn by people that got into trouble with the law. Okay? So how many of these how many of the criminal arrests have led to administrative arrests at these facilities? That would be something to keep in mind. I just wanted to show you that. But around the country, I think most of you, the vast majority of employees, want to do the right thing. Most people want to do the right thing. I mean, who wants to employ ex-cons, and how many people want to, drug dealers from Mexico and Guatemala, and no, we don't have any in Guatemala. I mean, how many of you want to employ, right? Most people want to do the right thing when it comes to employing people and having people that will do the work that's needed. But, there is an impact of larger forces as well. Speaking of the question of what's the impact that the rule or such a plan would have on our industry, we don't know the impact, but what is the impact of larger forces? We don't have a whole lot of room on the unemployment side, right? What's the unemployment rate right now? I think October, 4.7 in October, right? There's not a whole lot of room. And we're competing, many of us are competing for employees with other industries, right? But again, there's impact of other other forces in California. For example, in Bakersfield, I have a friend managing a 4,000 cow dairy, and he says every day, the last month or two, he has 8, 9 people from construction businesses. Because what happened to construction in California? Right, housing crisis hits construction. People unemployed now looking for jobs, right? There are the next point that I want to make. There are a number of. I think this is one of the things that scares people as far as the raids that have gone on around the country and the impact that can have on a business. And actually, in the later slide, when I talk about having a plan, I would ask you, what would your plan be if you were to be raided today? And telling people to run, that doesn't work. That's, right? And the other thing that's going on around the country, I want to make sure that, I appreciate the invitation by Dow for me to be here today, and I want to make sure that my comments are my own and not those of Dow. Okay? Thank you. But, around the country, what do most employees think about this issue? Are you aware of what do most of your employees think? Most of your, whether legal or illegal? What do they think about the issue? Well, people are legal, they whatever, it doesn't affect me, right? How about those that are illegal?
They're worried.
Are they? They're worried?
They're concerned that they're somebody's going to show up, arrest,
Uh-huh.
take them away from their family or friends.
Okay. Concerned that they will be arrested, take them away from family and friends. I would say there's maybe even within the illegal group, there are different concerns for those that have families here, wife, husband, kids, and those that are single. If I'm single, 22, and I've been here 6 months, 8 months, what's the worst that can happen? A free ride home, right? And it's Christmas time, right? But, these are realities of what we face in our industry, right? I think that in general, maybe people are a little bit isolated or insulated from the reality of how harsh this could be for business or for their livelihood. But I would say that depending on age and marital status, and that's going to impact the what their feelings about this whole thing is. But I think that most people, what do most employees want, whether this is going on or not? They want a job that pays decent, and where it's a decent place to work, and I can make a living, and I can send some money home. But I think that for the most part, what I run into is, there are some people that are running around scared, but most people are just, what's the worst thing that can happen, and kind of running their background check on that. But I would ask you, where in these different categories do you fit? Number one, I don't have a plan. Number two, my plan is to do nothing at this point. And that's okay. That's a plan too, right? Number three, my plan is, and here's where you can fill in the blanks. But that's I think the challenge you have in front of you right now. You might say, well, this is something going on, it's something that I can't control and is beyond my ability to do something about. Wrong. I think that there are some specific things you need to be doing and specific things you can do as far as a plan to do something with the situation. Okay? One of the things, even if it's just basic communication with your employees, as far as what's going on, just sitting down and opening up a session where you can have open conversation about what's going on, how they feel about what's going on, and appreciating people for what they're doing, and saying, you know what, we value you, for what you're doing here. We want you to know that we're doing everything within our means to take care of the situation. You know, that's what leaders do, right? They communicate. So keep that in mind. The other thing is, you know, whether, depending on how new people are in the States, I think it's important to educate and continue to educate employees about drawing attention to themselves and how the law might actually bring somebody to the premises that is going to impact the business, you know. So I think this is important as well. As far as what I mean by categorizing employees, that's kind of part of what a plan would be, and that is, okay, the question I was asking you earlier. If you have, with a great degree of certainty, you know who has good papers and who doesn't, and then for those who don't, then what do you need to do? Or for those that you know that there's a mismatch between the name and social security number, I think that would be part of possibly a plan. Some possible action steps. Communication, I think that's a key part of this whole thing. Like I said, most rates are going to places where there's someone in trouble with the law. But develop a plan. One thing would be to have a contingency plan. What if you were to lose half of your employees today? What would you do? Where would you go? Well, I talked to some producers and they say, well, I know who I can hold on to for the moment, and then you know, most of us would go milk and feed cows, and I'll go to the local high school and try to get some part-time employees. Well, how long is that going to last? 2 days, right? They figure it out how it works, right? But it's the scary part about this whole thing, right? It's the scary part about this whole thing that we have, whether it's 500 animals or 5,000, somebody's got to do some key things, right? Even if we don't breed cows for a month, but feeding and milking and those basic chores, who's going to do it? Who's going to do it? So I think that, one, you should be thinking about a contingency plan. What would you do if you were to lose half of your employees today? And one would be maybe a little bit of a longer term plan. I-9 forms. There's a new I-9 form out, and the way I understand it, that there is, if you read up on it, if you Google it, there are a number of employees that you already have an I-9 form filled out, that you don't need to do a new one. But there might be a group of employees that you need to do a new I-9 form for, okay? And then the key steps for the I-9 form is the pieces of ID that you're presented with. But everybody, you have to have an I-9 form for every single employee in your operation, okay? So that might be but it's one of those things that not everybody is fully aware of. Make sure all I-9 forms are complete for every employee. Get yourself a hold of, get yourself an immigration attorney. I think it doesn't hurt to be working closely with somebody local, that as local as you can get, that can help you staying abreast of issues and help you with specific people that you're trying to get papers for. Support their industry efforts in terms of joining forces. I think this is one of those, if there is, as little as you think that this might contribute, is your voice counts. You know, we're too few. Even if we add up all of agriculture, we're too few. So we got to join forces in talking up to the government about what our needs are. So make sure that you're talking through your professional producer group or through your state representatives. What about supporting employees with visas? And this is another thing that's all over the border. There are some dairies that are saying, I keep saying dairies, but they're dairies or feed yards or really anybody in agriculture or in other industries. But the range goes from, you know what, I don't think that's something I want to mess with, it's too tedious of a process, all the way to people that are constantly working through the system and getting visas for employees. The H-2A program, I think, is probably the closest tool that we have for getting employees legal, even though it's a seasonal type of visa, but at least you can get somebody working through the system where they can have a legal way of working in the States. Training type visas like J1, there's a dairy in Minnesota they're using heavily the J1 type work visa for trainees. Those work great. I think it's a 2 or 3 year program, but at least it's something that can get you started. Staying informed, there are several websites. If you want to write some of these down, I think that the FELS, the FELS website does a nice job of updating it a few days a month. The Center for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement website. It's interesting that the White House website hasn't been updated since August on this whole issue. They were running updates routinely. Even when Bush was getting up in front of everybody saying what they were trying to do for immigration, but after August, nothing on the website. Very interesting. The lawsuit, the actual paper for the lawsuit, we can show. Greg, if we can show you can actually find that on there's the lawsuit between the American Federation of Labor and Chertoff.
We don't finish the building.
Huh?
We don't finish the building.
The what? Oh, you were writing the other ones. Yeah, let's go back. So I just wanted to show you that. You can have access. You can read the whole lawsuit on the Northern California District Court. It's cand.uscourts.gov. And in there you can go to judges, and you go to Breyer, and then you can find the ruling. It's about 40-some pages long, I think. The Dairy Alliance website for Penn State does a nice job of helping you work through different forms, like the I-9 form. It has a step-by-step of what you should be collecting. DairyAlliance.psv.edu/HR/Hispanic. Ready? I think I would be doing a disservice if I didn't talk a little bit about just beyond immigration, okay? Because I think whether we have these rulings or how heavily they're going to come down on our business or not, we got to continue to emphasize how we have made the shift from managing the cows ourselves, and yes, many of us still do some work related to the cows every day, but as we get beyond that size and try to get everything done through people, I think there's more and more need for us to exercise our leadership abilities. So I think that with what's going on, and always I'm going to encourage you to pay attention to some of these key issues: communication, retention, and motivation. I think that in terms of communicating with your employees, like I was saying earlier, it wouldn't hurt if you just increase a step or two your level of communication with employees, get to know what they're thinking, get to know what the overall feeling of the crew is, or different crews is. So communicate at a higher level. You need to think about what's going on. You communicate to employees, and like I was saying earlier, an opportunity for you to assure that or address with employees, we value you, we couldn't do this without you, and we need you around here. We're doing everything that we can to make sure that we work through this to keep things stable. I think that this is a good time of the year, or any time of the year is a good time of the year for some one-on-ones, especially with those that you are seeing that are taking on more responsibility, those people that you're maybe placing in supervisory roles or leader roles in, breeder crews or in the parlor, or but an opportunity to talk one-on-one, whether it's you or your managers or your supervisors, have them talk one-on-one with employees about, what are they thinking about things, if they're thinking about going back home, or, I think those kinds of things can come up in these types of conversations. As far as retention strategies, what has worked for you and what can help you in the current situation is holding on to, not necessarily holding on to everything you got, everybody you got, because you may not need that, but in terms of keeping and retaining your most valuable employees, what are you doing to help you along those lines? And I think that the top retention strategies for me would be, if I go back to why do people leave the jobs that they have, and how many people leave for greener pastures, for a better pay, as a percentage of other reasons, or didn't get along with their boss, or because of strained relationships, or, but I think that the key retention strategies for me are continue developing close relationships with employees, get to know them better, because that's where in those conversations you're going to get to know what they're thinking, what their longer term plans are. As far as giving and receiving feedback, the giving part is key in terms of helping people understand or know how they're doing. Okay? Whether white, Hispanic, whatever labels we want to put on people, but people and their jobs want to know how they're doing. So in terms of a retention strategy, I think a key one is telling people how they're doing. Good or bad, but people need to know how they're doing. So giving feedback. Another key retention strategy, I think, is helping people better themselves in terms of providing training and expanding skills. Continue to evaluate what training needs they have and expanding their skills so that they can do their jobs better. And what are some of the compensation tactics that you might want to consider for current and future ones?